In this video, we're going to cover variables. In Ubot Studio, the set command is used to store information in a variable. A variable is like a storage container for data. You can store data in the container and then pull it back out by placing the variable inside of a command or function. I'm just going to drag out the set command to the scripting area. We're going to name this num. I'm going to set it to be 1. And then I'm going to place it inside of an alert command. I'm just going to copy this with Control C, paste it with Control V, hit OK. If I set a variable num here to be 1 and then place that inside of an alert, you will see that it replaces our variable with the data that it is storing. When I run this, we can see that we actually see the number 1 instead of the hashtag num. Now, if I change that 1 to be a 2 and run this, you can see that it changes in the alert. But notice that we didn't have to modify the alert command directly. Variables are the first data type we are going to talk about for a reason. You will likely use variables in every program you make, and they are the easiest data type to understand. Variables are used to store a single instance of a piece of data in text format. Variables are mutable, which means that you can change the contents of a variable simply by using the set command again. So if I set this num to be 2, I'm just going to copy and paste this, Control C, Control V, and then I change this to be 2 TWO, bring up the debugger. I can hit run and we can see that the value of num is 2, and then I can run this and you can see that the value has changed. So we can change variables. They are mutable. Now that we know a little bit about variables, let's take an in-depth look at what the set command is and what you can do with it. I'm just going to get rid of this. The set command is made up of 4 components. We have the variable name, the new value, we have this quotes button, and an advanced section. The variable name is a unique name that you choose to represent the data that is stored within. The name must be made up of letters, numbers, spaces, and underscores. No other characters can be used in the name, and the name cannot start with a letter, neither can any new word after a space. So let me show you what I mean by that real quick. We can use letters, such as this. We can use numbers. We can use spaces, and we can type, a new, let's type an actual word. Word 1, space, word 2. There we go. We can also use underscores. So underscore word 3. And if I hit enter, that's okay, and that's a legal name. However, we cannot use special characters. So I'm going to type word exclamation mark, and you'll just have to trust that I'm hitting the shift key and all the numbers up top to try and type special characters. We cannot type special characters other than underscores. A variable cannot start with a number. So I cannot say 3 words. If I hit OK, we can see that we get this invalid parameter message. We also cannot start a new word within the variable name with a number. So if I have word 1, space, and then I try to type second word and hit OK, we also get this invalid parameter. So just remember, always start your variable names with letters. And if you want to use spaces, then always start new words with letters as well. Now you can click on this drop-down icon to see what variables are in use. You can also, under the parameters variables section here, see them here as well. Naming conventions are an important part of programming, and you will often see scripts that follow certain conventions such as camel case and Pascal case. When you first start out, you don't have to worry about this just yet, but it's something to keep in mind for later. For now, I'm telling you this because I will be using camel case and I want you to understand why. For your own programming, you can do what is comfortable for you. Just remember that whatever you do, be consistent. If you like to use underscores instead of spaces, then make sure you always do that throughout your script. So I'm going to show you a brief example of what camel case is. It is starting the first character with a lowercase letter, and all the rest of the letters in the word are lowercase, so like so. And then every new word will start with an uppercase letter, and the rest of the letters throughout the word will be lowercase, like so. That's camel case. So here's another example. Here is another example. And as you can see, it just makes it easier to read. Now, Pascal case is when you capitalize the first letter in every word, including the first. Like that. So here is another example. So that's the difference between camel case and Pascal case. Like I said, you can use whatever you're comfortable with, but whatever you do, be consistent throughout your script. Moving on, we have this new value section. This is where you put the data that you want to be stored. In Ubot, variables are dynamically typed, meaning you don't need to tell the compiler what type of variable it is. If the variable is an integer, which is a whole number, then it will treat it like an integer when it needs to. And if you have a string, such as a word or a sentence, then Ubot will treat it like a string when it needs to. So with that in mind, we could set a variable to be a number, such as 5. We could set another variable to be a string, such as apples. And maybe we can set another number to be a decimal, like 11.5, and then we can set one last string, string 2 to be I like bananas. So you can store all different kinds of information in variables. So like I was saying, you can store all kinds of information in variables. If you recall, in the last video, we talked about the purpose of a function and how its job is to return data. Well, you can return data to a variable for storage, or you can even refer to one or more variables. So I could store the URL, for example, if I set a variable, we'll call this URL, and then I use the URL function, which is going to return the current browser URL, and I'll hit run, and we'll open the debugger with Control D, and you can see that we're now storing the URL, which was the data that the URL function returned to this URL variable. Let's get rid of all of this real quick and bring in a new set command. The next part of the set command is the quotation marks you see. When you mouse over them, the pop-up says, quotes the input so it is not parsed as a math expression. Let's have a look at what that means. I'm going to set a variable called addition, and I'm going to say 1 plus 1, hit OK, and as you can see, this new function was automatically added, and it's called add, and I'm sure you can guess what it does. So let's go ahead and open the debugger, press run, and you can see that the variable is now set to 2, which of course is the value of 1 plus 1. So what happened was we added a math expression within the new value parameter. And when we hit enter, Ubot automatically added this addition function. So if we look at this again, you can see that it says quotes the input so it is not parsed as a math expression. So let me go ahead and do 1 plus 1 again, but this time I'm going to press the quotes button. And when I do, you can see that now Ubot treats it differently. Instead of trying to add the numbers together, it's just treating it as plain text. And if I hit run and open the debugger, we can now see that the addition variable says 1 plus 1, which was what I originally wanted it to do. So if you're running into that problem where Ubot is trying to take your math expression too literally, you can click on the quotes button and it will quote the input so it's not parsed as a math expression. Finally, we have the advanced section. As you can see, it says local or global and is defaulted to global. This is the scope of the variable, and it has to do with where the data for the variable can be seen. Global means that the variable can be seen everywhere throughout your script. Local means that only commands and functions contained within the same custom command or function can see the variable. For now, always keep this to be global. Local variables are a more advanced topic, and generally they are used in multi-threading. When you are first starting out, you will be using global variables, and so you won't need to change this setting. One thing to note about local variables: you won't see the data in the debugger. And so if you have a problem where it seems a variable is not setting properly, just be sure that the scope is set to be global. And remember that this is under the advanced section. When you're normally looking at this variable here, the advanced section will be collapsed like this. So you're going to need to click on this to expand it in order to change it. That's all you need to know about variables for today, and maybe even a bit more than you need to know. I wanted to ensure that you have enough information to use this video as a resource or a reference point to look back on when you need to. We will be using variables a lot. Like I said in the beginning, it's likely you will use them in every program you make. To reinforce your variable knowledge, we're not skipping right to the next data type, but instead, in the next video, we're going to talk about loops. I'll see you then.